Welcome guests, music lovers, and friends to the closing concert of the third season of the California Young Artists Symphony. I'm Alexander Zeitlin, the artistic director and conductor for the evening, and it's my pleasure to introduce you all to our program. Our music tonight is a selection of contrasts beginning with Ippolyta Vivanov's Kafkazian sketches, complemented by Mozart's dark and brooding C minor piano concerto, and punctuated by Stravinsky's monumental Rite of Spring. Ippolyta Vivanov was a composer, conductor, music historian, and musicologist whose music spanned from the late 1800s into the early 1900s. These pieces borrowed themes from the Caucasus region encompassing Dagestan, Georgia, Abkhazia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, and presents them in a symphonic setting. Our adaptation for the evening includes the opening cadenza performed by Turkish Ney, an end-blown wooden flute with a unique mouthpiece, and theorbo lute, often used in Baroque ensemble. Mozart's Piano Concerto is one of his rare works composed in a minor key, and one of the only two minor key piano concertos composed. This dark and brooding work is performed by David Kaplan, renowned for his striking and imaginative performances on both the West and East Coasts, a champion of new music and professor at UCLA. After intermission, our program culminates in Stravinsky's monumental Rite of Spring. This work, brought about by the impresario Sergei Diaghilev, was a collaboration between the composer Igor Stravinsky and choreographer Vaslav Nijinsky, first performed by Ballet Russe at the Theatre des Champs-Élysées in 1913. Rhythmic and thoroughly modern in its composition and style, this work was decades ahead of its time. Other works like it weren't composed until long after the Russian Revolution and the world wars of the early 1920s and 30s. The monumental work is among the most complex ever staged, with unique quintuple winds and brass, doubled contrabassoon, doubled timpani drums, and string parts often divided into 6 layers per part. Yet not a note seems to be wasted, owing largely to Stravinsky's revisions, which he developed for over 30 years after the work was premiered. The work is steeped in legend, with a chaotic preparation and a ride in the audience during the premiere. The conductor, Pierre Monteux, after reading through the piano version of the piece before rehearsals began, left the room, found a quiet corner, and told Diaghilev that he would never conduct the work. Having been convinced to reconsider, he spent most of the first week of rehearsal dealing with note checks, where the orchestra would constantly interrupt him, asking if the notes printed in their parts were actually correct or were in error. Nijinsky, an extremely talented ballet dancer, turned out to struggle in his role as choreographer. Stravinsky wrote in his diary of painful exchanges between him and the dancers, and being summoned by Diaghilev to resolve a quarrel among Nijinsky and the dancers that nearly stopped production entirely. The premiere performance was oversold to the point where patrons were standing in the stairwell for a glimpse of the performance. Though it was primarily the dances that shocked the audience began throwing things into the orchestra pit and became so riotous that the dancers reported not being able to hear the orchestra at all. Though it was widely controversial, the Rite of Spring became one of the most important works in all of music history and enjoyed immense success over 100 years after its premiere. It's a pleasure to bring this program to the stage. On behalf of our musicians hailing from Long Beach to Los Angeles to Santa Barbara, our artist board and our founders board, we hope you enjoy the beauty of the evening's music together with your friends and our artist community.